about what's the added incentive to get better. Is my time best spent getting better at something I'm already good at? Or is my time better spent focusing on things in areas that I'm deficient in and getting them to a point where they become skills, where I take a weakness and I drive it to become a skill? Because when you start thinking about when you apply for positions, what you're trying to do is to get a position that's going to accelerate your career development. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is by proving to others that you have the additional skills necessary to make you a qualified candidate for that role. So spending that time building and developing weaknesses that matter to your evolution as an information security leader is extremely important.
And the ability to communicate that ultimately comes down to sales.
How many people have a sales component in their current role? You know, we all have sales components. You know, every day in our jobs, security professionals, whether you work internally for a company in a corporate security team, work externally as a consultant or a product vendor, you have to sell the concept of security. You're selling the importance of your job. You're selling the importance of you actually being there. You have to think of yourselves as your own personal sales force. And you have to convince others that you have value beyond the value that they're currently employing you for.
Does anybody here know the story of Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla and how they were sort of intertwined? Why does everybody know Edison and nobody knows Tesla? It's because Edison was a great salesperson. They were both great inventors. But Edison sold his ideas. And Tesla sat in a lab and came up with crazy stuff and was the traditional mad scientist. And the difference between being famous through all of history and being a crackpot admired by a few is sales. We sometimes think, especially in the more lofty sort of academic ways that we often get around Black Hat and conferences like it, that the people with the best ideas are the ones that win. Nope. Sorry. Hey, you know, it's one of those sad but true facts of life that you can be the smartest person in the room, but if you can't communicate that, if you can't sell that, you're done.
When you stop selling yourself, your career will die. You will become more and more irrelevant. Others will pass you by. I mean, you could probably see, this is, I've been to every Black Hat. This is, like, I guess 13 years at this. I remember it was like 100 people at the hotel's not even there anymore. But if you think about it, I remember meeting people at that conference that are not even in the industry anymore. A lot of the people's skills are irrelevant. You know, they became the last buggy whip maker. They stopped being out there. They got tired. Sales is perpetual. And, you know, you said before when Mike asked the question about, you know, who's your current customer? And you said, but you know what, though? You had the right answer to this question. I mean, who's your potential customer? And that's the answer, is everyone is your potential customer. You're always interviewing for your next position. You're interviewing for every day when you go to work. You're interviewing it through your social networks. You're interviewing here at the conference when you meet people at Black Hat. That impression that they get, just being able to kind of, that interaction that they have with you is going to become memorable at some point in time.
Let me jump in and ask a random question. How many people have ever written a sales letter? Thank you for jumping ahead. Nicely done.
You've seen the talk before.
Yeah,
and I'm on the hotel's wireless, so you might be on my.
Yeah.
I trust everybody.
Like what? 10% of you put your hands up. But if I asked you how many of you have a resume, I bet there's nobody in the room that doesn't. Well, what's a resume? It's a brochure for you. It's a sales letter for you, right? If you think about it that way, it becomes a very different tool. Because we were all taught, and Lee said it earlier, we don't live in our parents' world. We don't live in the world that, you come out of college and you send a nicely formatted CV via the mail to a response to an ad in the local newspaper classifieds. A resume is a sales letter. A resume is a sales letter that says, hey, I might be calling on you later. You've all dealt with salespeople at some point if you've walked through this conference. They get your email address when they scan your badge, and then they send you something. Well, that's exactly what you're doing when you're sending a resume.
If you think about, where everybody being your potential customer, I think that, one of the things that people forget is that they go to places or they put themselves in position where they don't have unique skills, where, they want to speak at a security conference, as opposed to if you wanted to become the chief information security officer in the healthcare industry, instead of speaking at a security event, you might want to start gravitating to go to healthcare events. So the idea is that you have to go to places when you're selling yourself, to places where you are the unique one. You go to places where you are the oddity, where you have information that people can't get anywhere else in the room. You become that expert. You think about it, when you have a product need and there is a solution that really will solve your problem, you might be the one that calls the salesperson. I mean, how easy would it be to interview for a position if somebody called you up and said, hey, we have an opening and we think you'd be perfect for it? Not much of an interview process, right? How much different is that than if you just send your resume to some blind website and, you're one of 150 people in the black hole of monster.com or some internal HR function? You think about that. You have to seek out opportunities. You're always out there selling yourself. And you could sell yourself in ways where just by volunteering yourself, getting out there and trying to help others, help people in your current companies solve security problems. Go beyond your job descriptions. Build friends within your organization that become folks that count on you. Think about what people are going to think about you in your job if you become the person that they count on to help them solve security problems. Think about when the next internal promotion comes up and they ask others, who do you think we should give it to? Well, if an executive VP in an organization says, you know what, I don't know much about security, but Patty, she really solves my problems for me. Every time I have something, she's great. She communicates well. Everything's done timely. Why don't we give it to Patty? You think about who your audiences are. You touch your audiences every day. Going the extra mile for people is the way to sell things to people without being overtly selling them. You think about walking into a car dealership. I mean, how many, you can't even get out of your car without getting swarmed, right? You don't want to be that person. You want to sell through knowledge. You want to sell through the fact that people are going to like you. You want to sell through that relationship. You want to build those relationships, and those relationships can be found everywhere. In your job, in industry events, online, you name it.
And ultimately that brings up the next question of marketing. Because sales and marketing go hand in hand.
Does anybody have understanding how marketing differs from sales?
What's the difference?
Nobody? All right, good, we got a customer. Okay. Anybody else? Marketing is the preparation for the sale.
That's good.
Market, market awareness, Carol? Managing perception. I think those are all good answers.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, selling is almost the act and marketing is almost the method, right? I mean, that's how I kind of look at it. I kind of look at, marketing really becomes, marketing might be the bow and the nice wrapping paper on top of the actual package itself. So, you talk about marketing, you have to really talk about branding and building the brand. Companies spend millions and billions of dollars to build that brand.
And ultimately, that's all about one thing. The purpose of marketing is really simple. And you can measure a successful marketing program, in my opinion, as somebody who does a lot of marketing, by one thing. How many leads do you have? Marketing is lead generation. How many leads, how many people out there are aware of what you do and are interested enough to talk to you about it? That's when sales starts. Sales starts when the lead shows up. As Lee says, that's when the act starts. But marketing is the act of creating awareness in all the people who could potentially be interested in you about what you do, about what your product is.
But in marketing, there's also a big difference between an unqualified lead, just that email that gets sent, and a qualified lead, somebody who can actually have an impact on your career.
So, your high school best friend who's not in this industry is an unqualified lead.
Sure. The chief security officer at a major Fortune 500 company would be a very qualified lead.
Exactly. So, I ask you to think about it. How many people who are your potential customer know of you and know what you do? And I would bet that most of your answers are probably pretty small. You're not out there. And I'm not suggesting that you be one of those guys that hits the news every 2 or 3 years who takes out a billboard in Times Square saying, hire me. You guys have all heard those random stories peppered through the news every couple of years. Somebody does something really random like that. And I'm not suggesting that you go put up a glamorous website for yourself with, pictures of you at play and pictures of all the stuff that you've done. But figure out how to market. Figure out how to reach those people and make them aware of what you do. Obviously, you can do the kind of stuff we do. Speaking, blogging, writing. But maybe you're not that kind of person. Maybe you're the kind of person that goes out to events and markets one-on-one. You have to figure out how to go out and get those people aware of what is your brand, who you are, and what you do.
When you start thinking about businesses marketing, right? You start thinking about, slogans, packaging, just being kind of known for something, and start thinking about all the, the different brands that we get hammered on, with the Super Bowl. I always think, this kind of sounds crazy, and I'll probably get some bad reaction, but that company GoDaddy with their bold Super Bowl ads, they're tasteless, and they're not, but in a very short period of time, that's the brand that's been associated with GoDaddy. That's the type of thing that I equate as their, trashy Super Bowl ad. That's the first thing I would think about, right? So when when you talk about branding, you have to think about how you want to be perceived. And that perception can be very easy. It could be very easy to talk about branding yourself within the context of your job, within the context of your local community and your peer groups, and in the context of the information security community at large. There's so many different groups that people can volunteer. I think about in New York, we have a very active OWASP chapter, and there's a guy that runs the OWASP community in New York, a guy named Tom Brennan. I just think of him as Mr. OWASP. Everything about OWASP, he's always involved with. And, that just kind of equates. So if I had a question about web application security, he'd probably be the first guy